Welcome, everyone. This is Our Souls Speak. We're in constellation in divine space. We convene with our souls to listen, share, and explore. Our Souls Speak, a podcast where together with our guests, we embody the soulful principles of oneness and sourceness.
Bienvenidos a todos. Esto es Nuestras Almas Hablan. Welcome, everyone. This is Our Souls Speak. Hoy, nuestra invitada es Hilda Marie. Bienvenido, Hilda.
Gracias, encantada. So happy to be here.
Yes, today our guest is Hilda Marie. Hilda, you are a mental health professional, ordained interfaith minister, psychic medium, and medicine woman. You have served in the roles of a counselor, healer, spiritual coach to hundreds of individuals for over 35 years. You reside in the Catskills region of New York, where you offer your clients intuitive readings, Reiki, and mediumship sessions. And you are committed to preserving indigenous healing traditions and honoring the wisdom and the ways of the ancestors. You do what you do because your soul knew from a very early age that you chose your family of origin to help transmute generations of trauma and suffering and write a new story of love and healing for your present and future generations. This was your soul contract, and it became your life's purpose, to serve as a bridge to the light. So your topic today is the power of the cycle breakers. As a medium, you've been seeing spirits since you were a little girl.
Since the age of 3, yes.
Yeah.
So my first encounters with spirits were actually quite frightening. I was 3. I didn't really have yet the words to explain to others what was happening. And my nighttime was often interrupted by these presences in the room. I remember in particular an elderly gentleman sitting at the foot of the bed. I remember another woman pacing, sort of in despair. And I would try to tell, with my limited, verbal abilities, to tell my parents and others what I was experiencing, but I very quickly got labeled as, in Spanish, the word is loca, which means mentally unwell. And it shut me down a great deal. But over time, I started learning those spirits weren't there to frighten me. They were actually seeking assistance to cross over into the light. I encountered spirit guides very early, so that by the age of 6, I was already able to cross over my first spirit who I'll never forget.
So for our audience members that aren't aware of what cycle breakers mean, can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. The truth is we all are that, and some of us are existing in more consciousness and awareness that perhaps we have come into soul contracts and storylines and generational and ancestral traumas and often are even called curses, but I don't prefer that word. And we are here with a purpose. However, when we're born into families where deep levels of pain and dysfunction exist, we often forget our soul contract. We forget that we came here with the intention of bringing light and bringing healing, and often find ourselves immersed in the very patterns that we came here to fix or heal.
And so how do you do that? And how do you support others in doing that?
So cycle breakers have several things in common. Often, it's a role that comes with a lot of pain. It means that they have experienced, as I said, the very things that they had, prior to arriving here in the afterlife, committed to helping to heal. However, those are different planes. And when we arrive in the human body, that purpose is often forgotten. In fact, sometimes it's necessary for us to forget what the contract was so that we can carry it out What is essential in working with people as well as in communicating with spirit is to identify patterns. And so cycle breakers are often folks who are existing in families where there is abuse, addiction, mental illness, and many, many harmful patterns that have not just existed in the family of origin, but in many generations before them. And the cycle breaker is often identified as a troublemaker, as the black sheep, as the one who's going sort of, against the waves, against the patterns that the family is trying to preserve for survival and for protection, and is often also immersed in the pain of those patterns initially until they recognize that I'm here to feel it so that I can feel it.
Yeah, I know before I realized I was one, I had an experience in Ecuador of the really strong realization that I was, as a child, I decided to carry the burdens of my mother, grandmother, probably even more, before I learned how to transmute. I'm sure that's very common and familiar for you. Can you speak a little bit about that and how you help yourself and others?
In fact, most of the people who do come seeking my support, either as a psychic, a medium, or a counselor, or healer, however, whatever level of healing they're seeking, they are already coming carrying so much. And many of them, like you, like myself, are containers. They've come here with some sort of commitment to hold the pain of their loved ones, to be a space for them, perhaps, to diffuse sometimes the tension or the anger, the emotions that may be directed at that individual or other individuals in the family. And so there's an aspect of sacrifice where the cycle breaker is concerned. And I use that word really cautiously because what is done in love is truly not sacrifice, it's just love. And so this loving intention to hold all of it with no memory of the soul contract that was made or the agreement that you'd made can sink us into despair. And that's usually when people find me trying to understand, how do I break free? How do I change, not just for myself, but for the generations to come?
Yeah, there was this really deep heaviness that I was carrying, and it's been profound to let go of that and feel the light. I'm really interested in your experience with, we're going to go deeper now into the dimensions and how you experience them, how you connect with other spirits.
Key to that is my awareness that it is my last go round. So I'm aware that this is my last life cycle. And that's not also uncommon for many of us. However, I remember a lot of those lifetimes, and there were recurrent themes in those lifetimes, and there were recurrent people. And so in remembering those lifetimes, I would sometimes encounter those stories here and those individuals here and recognize that we had existed in other places. Sometimes those were other universes. Sometimes it was this planet here. And sometimes it was these divine sort of in-between spaces where we go to grow and learn when we pass on. For me, I would describe it as if there were a veil or a wall between the physical and the spiritual realms. And that veil is thinner. That wall is thinner for me. And so it's much easier for me actually to move into that world than it has been to move back into the earthly world. It's much easier to spend a lot of time over there. And so that's the caution as well, to find a balance, to remember my contract was to be here to do some work. So I can't spend all my time in all those beautiful spaces, having those amazing conversations of other beings.
I guess probably one of the last questions I have before we turn it over is, yeah, what is the vibration there like for you, the sensations, what you feel?
So the vibration in these spaces and when you encounter spirit can range from a very heavy, low, sad frequency to very high vibration, almost to the point where they're unseeable. They're more a presence or a force. Whereas spirit that is still very attached to the earthly existence or is unprepared to cross over to higher levels can feel very dense, and which is why sometimes they actually materialize or things happen in the home where things may be moved or people actually claim to have seen the spirit in some form. So there's every level, as there is in humans, every level of vibration and frequency.
I want to know how you take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's been and is a lifelong learning process.
Yeah.
I learned very quickly because my initial work was with trauma and with survivors of partner abuse and rape and incest. These are really very heavy scenarios. I learned very early on that I had to practice what I like to call detached attachment. So enough attachment to care, to truly care and feel and have compassion and investment in the healing of either the spirit or the person I'm interacting with, but also enough detachment where I'm not so immersed in the pain of it that I can't be functional or helpful. So it's a lifelong process, as I said, to master that, and I'm still working really hard on it. Animals and plant medicine and nature are my healers. I have a small zoo of rescues in all shapes, forms, and colors. Plant medicine has also been key to restoring so much, of myself after witnessing so much trauma.
It's wonderful to hear you speak about so knowledgeably about these incredibly important themes. And what I'm curious about is someone like myself who has nowhere near the capacity and experience that you have to open and navigate these experiences. What's your guidance to those of us who are relatively new to this awareness and wanting to honor what's here and what we can do and take care of ourselves and take care of each other in that process?
That's really a wonderful question. I appreciate it. The cycle breaker carries pain because they made a contract, and that sole contract was, I'm going down there to fix this thing, or I'm going down there to change the story. But guess what? Free will and humans are a real thing. And very often we arrive with the very best intentions, with the light that we've recently been existing in, and find ourselves facing obstacles that can feel insurmountable. And what I often say to cycle breakers, and I'm certain that everyone listening, everyone here in this space is indeed a cycle breaker. I always say, you didn't fail if you couldn't move your family forward. I have zero doubt that you brought it elsewhere. I have no doubt that the healing happened in other spaces with other people if your loved ones were not ready to receive it. And so I always encourage cycle breakers to recognize that coming here and trying is the success. That is the success, the very effort and sacrifice that it takes to enter, especially families and relationships where there's a lot of pain, abuse, addiction, etc.
Yeah, this is so helpful. You start to answer the second question that I had around free will, responsibility. What is my responsibility? What is the other members of my family responsibility? And how would I discern between overstepping my boundaries to interfere in the sovereignty of their being and stepping away because I'm not acting on the reason that I'm here?
Well, what often happens to the cycle breaker is that they begin to replicate, as I said, the same things they've committed to healing. And so first we experience it. And in doing that, it builds compassion and understanding for how very hard it is to break cycles. I mean, it's hard to break a habit such as nail biting or drinking too much, coffee. To change generations of cycles is so very difficult. And so to experience it first, I would hope would alleviate people of the shame that sometimes we carry for things like addiction or patterns where we find ourselves in harmful relationships. We have to live it to understand it. And to figure out, okay, maybe I'm in this experience because there's more here for me. Maybe I can't change all the generations past, but where can I start here with me and the ones to come?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hilda, just wanted to ask you, can you say anything about entities that latch on to people, feed off their energy?
Thank you. It's an important question because it is real and it does happen. And very often we unknowingly create portals and openings for these entities. So one of the things that I understand is that many behaviors that entail some level of addiction or dependence on substances, on pornography, on gambling, many of those behaviors are actually fueled by spirit attachments who have not left the earth entirely. Perhaps they're afraid. Perhaps there's a very strong tie, an earthly tie here, and continue to engage in those behaviors and activities through the host that they've attached to. And so who is a vulnerable host? Just about anyone, but where there is depression, abuse, lack, struggle, those are almost openings for these attachments to continue to thrive, even as the individual suffers immensely. Sometimes as kids, we open that portal really early. Kids who are playing perhaps with things like a Ouija board or different divination tools don't know how to protect themselves, right? And so a lot of the work I do is around white light is stronger than any darkness, illuminates any darkness. Carry it, surround yourself with it, and be in it, and do not invite or open any portals without your light around you, because a portal is a portal, and anything and anyone can come through it if you are not clear and firm in your boundaries about what you allow. I do want to say that those spirit entities often show up. So when I'm working with an individual or we're in a plant medicine experience, they show up. And I always say before I start any ceremony or healing that any spirit that shows up in my space is loud and clear saying, I need healing. And so I assume you are here because you're ready. You've seen an opening here. And so we're going to help you. And having love, compassion, and firm boundaries with those entities is also very important, because very often they are invested in crossing over. They just don't know how.
Could you speak to our experience when we go to sleep? Talk generally about what's going on in terms of our susceptibility or openness. I mean, personally, I generally have mostly dark dreams, lots of scenarios. Some is similar to my experiences, but a lot of them outside my experience. And yeah, I have a sense of what's going on, but I'd love to know your sense of what might be going on. Yeah, and for other people who might be having a similar experience.
Absolutely, that can be so frightening. In sleep, we're so vulnerable, but I like to remind folks that we're still in control, even in our sleep. And so the same boundaries that are established with spirit are important to establish before sleep. And so, for example, I'm very clear, no one is welcome here that I didn't invite. So that's a common, affirmation before my sleep. And if my soul decides to travel, I am tethered. I am tethered and I am coming back to this space. So wherever I go, I'm going to learn, but I'm not going to stay until it's time for me to stay in one of those spaces. There is some pre-dream control that you can establish simply by saying, if this recurrent nightmare or experience happens again, this is how I'm going to manage it. This is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to pull myself out of it. Because our souls do travel. And very often what happens is we get caught in the lower sort of vibrational frequencies or levels. And then, whoever's hanging out there has a bit of a field day with us. And it can be quite scary. So just remembering that you're in control and you can command control within those scenarios is really important. Even spirit follows laws and rules. So if spirit is in your space, it's okay to say, this is my space. You are not invited. Or if I invited you, I've changed my mind. And when we are in their spaces, we can also say, I'm still tethered. You cannot harm me in this space. You cannot pull on my energy in this space because I'm just here visiting.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know the work that I've learned from Lorna has really helped me in creating that pillar, which she calls pillar of light, and to check in on it all the time and mend anything that may not be mend any openings or tears to that. that's been a beautiful.
Thanks for saying that, Greg. I think the pillar of light is a divine light structure. Wait, I know it is a divine light structure. And so, the purpose of it is to protect us in the beginning when we're learning what our energy system is all about, maybe learning what spirit's all about, to protect us from taking in all these unbalanced energies. So there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask about. First of all, about cycle breakers. Yes, very familiar with this. And if you could speak to those cycle breakers who have reached the end of their tether, they've really tried all that they can with their family constellation situation, and those in the family are not, for whatever reason, free will conscious choice, or it's just not part of their path this time around to awaken. What's your advice for them?
It's okay to let go. You've come, you've tried, you've made every effort, and we have to honor that sometimes people aren't ready, but through our example and our moving forward, there is an invitation there for them to see, well, this could be different. And cycle breakers are so courageous because in that moving forward, very often there's alienation or isolation from loved ones. There's profound judgments. Very often they may be cut off or disowned, so to speak. And so it takes a lot of courage to say, I've done my best here. I still came with a soul purpose and I can bring it elsewhere. And so when you ask that question, I personally experienced this pain of not being held, especially the cycles of abuse and infidelity and pain and child abuse that existed in my both lineages, my mother and father. But I made a career out of it. I knew I came to help and that I had the skills and the gifts that I brought those. And that everything I was experiencing in the pain of those cycles was my school. And I would bring that out there and help people who were in fact ready. And so it really eased the pain of not being able to bring the healing to my loved ones.
Thank you, Hilda. I mean, there's sort of a continuum of cycle breaking from, those that are very successful to those that end up estranged from their family, or whatever the continuum is. And I definitely resonate with the courage and the fortitude that they must experience. I'm called for us to spend a minute or two just to radiate love and all that the divine wills for all those who are experiencing this right now. So if we could just spend a minute to radiate all that is aligned with divine will for all those who are experiencing this right now.
Hilda, is it possible for our kind of rhetorical question, because I've been feeling this, that in the experience that Greg and Dilraj and other brothers and sisters had last week, for the first time I really felt the presence of my vibrant ancestors, the feminine, the masculine, being available. And I have this feeling of us being able to support each other through those ancestors. In the same way, like the trees under the ground support through the network, that we can send resource that's available or surplus in our network into those circuit breakers that may be struggling, to further have the strength, resolve the will to continue that work. So is that transference something that's available?
Absolutely. We always have at the ready ancestors who are willing to support the healing process. And in fact, when I have done, for example, in medicine journeys, profound work with an individual, the visual of the healing going into the ground, the stone, the rocks, down to the earth, down to the bones of the ancestor is so clear. And the relief, it's almost like a collective sigh of all of those souls who've been waiting for the cycle breaker to initiate the healing, because it's not going to just heal here in the present, it's actually bringing healing to those souls and to their stories and to their traumas. And so there's a celebration every time a cycle breaker is born and embarks on this journey of healing. They're there for us, and they are at the ready, often waiting, often saying, "What took you so long?"
Yeah, what's coming up for me now is maybe speaking to those to come. What that means for you. And
Speaking about those to come can't be done but without acknowledging those who came and
Right.
those who did the profound work, because they set the foundation for the healing and hopefully the ending of these destructive cycles that often exist in families. And so there has to be an openness in those souls who have come new into this experience. And I like to use my children as an example, just because it's a personal and relatable one. In a family that was very resistant to healing, at a very young age, my children were open to counseling. And so when we think about the tools that are available in this generation, whether it's through alternative, holistic healing modalities, psychotherapies, medicine when it's called for, I think there's an openness in the newer generations, a receptiveness to doing that work, to establishing a firm foundation, even if they don't know the lineage and the history and the story. I get a lot more young men seeking support and healing than I ever have. Right? So I grew up in a time where, it was a boys don't cry mentality. I'm seeing a huge shift in the 20 and 30 something year olds coming forward and saying, I don't want to be like the men in my family. I don't want to repeat these cycles. How do I heal? Where do I start? And so I think the expansiveness and the evolution is already there in that generation, in this generation, and the ones to come through the work we've done.
My daughter, when she was months old, would climb up on my chest and shoo away whatever was there, and having that undeniable actual experience of her seeing and feeling and protecting her dad, or seeking to protect her dad, it's obviously very moving for me, and just feeling like there's so much more that we can do, want to do, in terms of, contributing to this whole work and this whole process.
In keeping with Greg's question, I want to say that children are teachers, and because they arrive here very recently, having been in those worlds that we're speaking of, in those higher planes, they come with lessons that we sometimes unfortunately dismiss or claim are fantasy or imagination, and yet they're talking to us all the time. I mean, my son said to me, "I used to be a light." He's a light. He's 2. He's a big light in a big space. And I saw that you were sad. And I asked, could I come to her? This is a 2-year-old conversation. And he said, I waited and I waited. And then one day I was told yes. And I came into your belly. At 2. What a loss for me if I had dismissed that as fantasy, right?
Right.
Because he had just given me part of his soul contract, right? Was to help pull me from the despair that had plagued generations of women in my family, making them, unfortunately, sometimes abusive or neglectful parents. So he had already given me a blueprint for what the plan was as far as he was concerned. They are our teachers, as is your beautiful little girl. I'm sure she's not a little girl anymore, but they always are to us, aren't they?
You speak with such clarity and lightness. It's so affirming to listen to you and being present. So how can we further support what we're seeing, what we're doing? We're in this constellation, we're with you now, and other beings are coming in, connecting to this constellation. What more and what further can we do to support you in what you're doing?
What a kind and thoughtful question. I appreciate that. It says a lot about who you are. I I feel that when individuals are ready for the more, our paths cross. And so I always encourage people, when you meet that someone who's ready for the more, don't be afraid to say, I know a psychic medium counselor, Reiki master who might be able to help. Part of my story was a lot of shame around my gifts. They have been vilified and they have been labeled from very early on. And so I spent a good portion of my life hiding until a near-death experience where the being that I encountered there said, what are you doing? You were given everything and then some to succeed and heal others and heal yourself. And what are you doing? And so I was given that opportunity to come back, but I was told you have to do the work. Now it's not a choice. And so I always encourage people to, when you encounter hurting souls, if you feel that my way of healing and supporting is helpful, send them my way, because I'm on my last lifetime. So I'm trying to see and help and support as many as I can before my time. I want to say, we are experiencing a lot of turmoil, and the world always has. That's not new, but it's different. It's taken on a different urgency, I think. And what I encourage all the cycle breakers, all the beautiful souls who came here in a commitment to be here and now in this world, is not to lose your light. And even as the world seems to crumble sometimes and we're aware of cruelty and pain, don't allow it to rob your joy. Stay in your light and joy, because then we lose the battle, right? It's like this wave that can just engulf all of us in despair, and despair leads to bad habits, leads to addictions, to depression, to so many things that then feed what I call the other side, the darkness. And so stay in your light and stay in your joy and gratitude and celebration. One thing doesn't take away from the other.
Right.
The world can still be in turmoil, and you can still be in the joy and the love and light of your existence.
I wanted just to say, how much joy I feel from you, around you, with you, and to feel someone in such profound, deep work in this final physical lifetime who's obviously emanating, feeling all of this from a place of joy is such an incredible inspiration. Thank you so much for all the gifts now and given and those to come.
Thank you. I've had some wonderful teachers along the way, so can't take all the credit. I'm happy to share that love and that joy here and to be part of this community, and in deepest gratitude for what you're bringing out into the world. Talk about higher frequencies.
Yes, you. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor.
Yeah, lots of love, Hilda.
Thank you. Likewise. Lots of love and healing.
To receive more information about our guests and future events, please visit our website at sourceness.one. We are one.